Recently, Microsoft was made a priority target for the BDS movement. If you don't know about BDS, the idea is that through tactics such as boycotts, divestment, and sanctions, BDS hopes to pressure Israel to comply with international law, all for the purpose of ending the genocide that is happening right now in Palestine. So by targeting certain companies or products, they have maximum impact. That's the plan. So Microsoft is one of the latest companies they've added to their priority list. As they note here, it's perhaps the most complicit tech company in Israel's illegal apartheid regime and ongoing genocide against 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. The Israel military uses Azure cloud and AI services, which are crucial to empowering and accelerating Israelis' genocidal war. They're calling for boycotts of all Microsoft gaming, including Xbox Game Pass, as well as any pretty much Microsoft product, including the operating system, Office, etc. As you see, the language isn't like absolutist. The goal is to boycott Microsoft products whenever possible, because obviously a lot of us run Windows PCs for work or pleasure. You can't just simply expect everyone to throw out their PC. But the idea is that, to refrain from buying anything new from Microsoft, limit your consumption of Microsoft products, basically. So for gamers, that's something as easy as don't buy the new Oblivion game. It's a remaster of an old game made by Bethesda, but now, of course, because of the consolidation of all things tech and the monopolization of everything, Microsoft owns Bethesda as well, so it's part of their portfolio, whatever, right? I don't really play any Microsoft games. Easy peasy. Now, Microsoft, of course, isn't the only company on the priority list. One that I just noticed that's on here is Disney Plus. In the spirit of the boycott, you may want to extend that to everything that's Disney. Let me read this. Cancel or don't sign up for Disney Plus subscriptions. Disney and its subsidiary Marvel are complicit in glorifying Israel's regime of genocide and apartheid against indigenous Palestinians. Marvel's Captain America Brave New World and Disney's Snow White Star, Shira Haas, and Gal Gadot, respectively, that have consciously and irrefutably taken up roles as cultural ambassadors for Israel, directly representing genocidal Israel's propaganda efforts. For Captain America, Marvel and Disney are reviving the racist character of Ruth Bat Seraph, whose decades-old backstory includes working for Mossad. Mossad is an intelligence agency, a secret service intelligence agency for Israel. Disney Plus is therefore clearly implicated in enabling Israel's genocide by dehumanizing Palestinians. But what about my Disney, my Marvel, my Star Wars? Especially when Andor Season 2 just premiered, because yeah, I do agree that Andor is the best Star Wars you'll ever see, probably. Story of this escapist who's only out for himself, radicalizing, and becoming a main figure in this revolution to take down a fascist empire, which then leads directly into the original Star Wars trilogy that everyone loves. The writing is the best writing of anything Star Wars. It trusts its viewers to understand what's going on. It's like subtle storytelling within the Star Wars universe that we're familiar with, but then it grounds it with this rigorous political text. And as the New Republic points out, what makes this show subversive really is its portrayal of violence and the necessity for violence in a revolution, along with all the messiness that comes along with it, So it grounds this world in a political reality that Lucas could only dream of. Radiant Hasili points out, though, that Lucas is straightforwardly stated that the rebels are the Viet Cong and the empires America, Britain, and Germany. Give the man some credit, which is true, but it feels like that was a little bit of child's play in comparison to what Tony Gilroy is doing here with Andor. But even Kevin Smith wondered who built the Death Star with his film Clerks.
The first Death Star was manned by the Imperial Army. The only people on board were stormtroopers, dignitaries, Imperials.
Basically.
The second time around, it wasn't even done being built yet. It was still under construction.
So
a construction job of that magnitude would require a hell of a lot more manpower than the Imperial Army had to offer. I'll bet they brought independent contractors in on that thing. All those innocent contractors brought in to do the job were killed. Casualties of a war they had nothing to do with.
We had this sequence, and because we added it, I came up with the idea of adding a little schematic of the Death Star. in here because the Geonosians build robots and build things. They're sort of the construction workers. They would be the ones that would probably be contracted to build the Death Star. And they were the ones that Jay and Silent Bob worried that they got killed on the Death Star, but they are, after all, just a bunch of large termites.
What Gilroy does is go even further than that, right? Goes a little darker, like, oh, it's not just contractors, it's prison labor that went into the building Death Star, as we saw in season 1 of Andor. In the first season, Andor gets falsely imprisoned in this facility to build parts for the Empire, as we see in the modern prison system today, right? That, has been compared to modern slavery. And then, of course, if you look at the news today, there's plenty of stories of ICE detaining innocent people and then sending them off to mega prisons in El Salvador. Andor is getting a little closer to home, isn't it? That's what makes the show stand apart from the other Disney shows. It's motivational, it's inspiring. In a moment now where a lot of people are afraid and scared of authoritarian / fascistic rule all over the world right now, right? I mean, as a leftist, it's the kind of show we dream of, right?
Tell him none of this is his fault. It was already burning. He's just the first spark of the fire.
Fight the Empire!
Is this show more like a motivational poster in a corporate office? A brief respite in the fantasy world of Star Wars before you go on to do the usual? Maybe watch some other stuff and pay another $15 every month on Disney Plus, a platform that profits off propaganda for Israel. In the latest season, we got this whole plot about the Gormans, right? The Empire basically wants to commit genocide and get rid of the Gormans so they can mine the planet for resources to build a Death Star. Here they're equating the Gormans to spiders as, repulsive, etc., dehumanizing them in order to make it easier for them to commit this genocide. Not dissimilar to what's going on with Israel. They have a whole propaganda machine that has worked very well in dehumanizing Palestinians. So there's this dissonance, right, with such a story being on Disney Plus. So maybe it's worth boycotting Andor for that reason. Disney's greatest piece of art perhaps is a way to distract you from their complicity. We're the good guys, we're not the Empire. We have stories about our heroes defeating the Empire. I mean, I've already decided that I'm not going to give any money to a property like Harry Potter because of J.K. Rowling. Here, Themper Kennedy says, there's simply no ethical way to support Harry Potter in 2025. It's not possible. 20 cents for every dollar you give. J.K. Rowling goes directly to physically harming a trans person, and that's not a joke or an exaggeration. Of course, recently, the UK Supreme Court ruled against trans rights, declaring that trans women are not women, taking away protection from trans and non-binary people, opening them up to further discrimination. Of course, she's celebrating like a typical misogynist supervillain. Petty Lobster here calls for treating the Harry Potter IP the same way we treat the Tesla brand. Some who are still tied to nostalgia still like the franchise and can somehow not be reminded of the stain that is Rowling, may even pirate Harry Potter stuff to avoid giving Rowling any money. Maybe the most ethical way to consume problematic media is, not to pay for it, but also not to speak of it. According to Olivia here, we live in a world that runs on people talking about things as much, if not even more, than it does people buying things. You personally can only spend like $15 a month on Disney Plus, but if you watch Andor and talk about how good it is, every single person who hears you is another potential $15. By consuming it and then praising it, it's acts as advertisement, right? So this is all just adding to the discourse, right? And it may just encourage this person to watch Andor instead of not watch it, and others as well. You can certainly convince people to try other things. Crystal here is suggesting Mosfilm on YouTube, which has a bunch of communist films which may have similar themes to Andor. Not a bad recommendation. But are most people really going to come down here to watch this instead of the new Star Wars thing? Perhaps it's a good thing that there's a strong anti-fascist message in a big show like Andor on a big platform, because otherwise maybe a mass audience won't be exposed to such ideas. You know, they would never come here. Furthermore, they have plenty of other options, right? And who knows what they're consuming. There's a bunch of other companies who are complicit in the evils, including Google, right? Google and Amazon are considered pressure targets in the BDSM movement that aren't on the forefront of the BDS movement because there really is not many reasonable alternatives. The big issue with Google here is Project Nimbus, which is a joint contract between Google and Amazon that provides cloud compute infrastructures and artificial intelligence and other technology services to Israel, to the Israeli government and Israeli military. There was a big protest from Google employees like a year ago about this. They wanted Google to divest, but they persisted. And of course, Google owns YouTube. Amazon, of course, is also part of this project. Amazon owns a bunch of internet servers, right? The Amazon Web Services is like a big portion of the internet. You can't expect everyone to check every time they go to a website if it's hosted by Amazon. It makes more sense that this is a pressure target, in which case try your best to avoid these companies, try not to order from Amazon. But in a lot of cases, there's no alternative. It's not going to be as simple for everybody to adhere to BDS 100%. And that's why they have these priority targets, right? So they can focus their energy on a few companies at a time. So I guess I'm still struggling whether there's a net positive in covering certain shows or certain things while also addressing the problems with it and the complicity that these companies have. Take a look at the Oscar-winning documentary film No Other Land, which I feel like most of us, right, recognize that this was a highlight of the Oscars. This film shows the brutality, the reality of the occupation in the West Bank that has and will open the eyes of a lot of viewers, right, to what's going on over there. But if we go back to BDS, particularly the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel and their position, there is a problem with this movie in that it actually violates the BDS movement's anti-normalization guidelines. The thing is that this movie was produced with the help of Close Up, which is an organization that engaged in the normalization of the genocide. Some of the team's Israeli members are not on record supporting the comprehensive rights of the Palestinian people. They have failed to acknowledge that Israel is perpetrating a genocide and have even made extremely harmful and immoral statements drawing a false equivalence between the colonizer and the colonized that may be used to rationalize Israelis' genocide. Now they don't really call for a boycott of this movie. They're just pointing this out. It's not like a priority target, of course. They want to, stay firm with their principles, and they feel like they have to call, certain problems like this out. I guess my point is that even some of the most impactful works of art that can lead to some change can be compromised. So then this brings me back to the Xbox article, where she writes here that, yes, I will continue to edit articles about Xbox release dates when they come my way at the copy editing gig that pays my rent. But I understand myself guilty of breaching the boycott, and it is a contradiction I must live with. Not to excuse away the feeling of guilt under a mantra like no ethical consumption under capitalism, but to gnaw at me from inside, to fuel me to make a different world beyond games where I do not have to live with this feeling anymore. We can't be too hard on people who are just trying to get by under the thumb of the empire. So stuck in the muck of the empire, of fascism, of capitalism, I think sometimes we all feel like we're stuck using their tools. As Luthen says,
I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them.
Which brings to mind Audre Lorde's famous quote, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house." This is often used to critique reformists who are trying to change the system from within. But I found this article from the activist school interesting in pointing out how the master's tools are really tools that we used to have. They've been taken from us, and we can reclaim them. They point to these writers here warfare was originally developed by nomadic anti-state forces. It was only later appropriated and turned against its developers. And then they say this: the creative, local, and artistic forces of culture have been forced into subservience by global mega-capitalism, which holds all the purse strings. Just because we are forced to sell our creativity does not mean that it constitutes the master's tools. If that were the case, capitalism wouldn't need to constantly cool hunt and turn what is authentic and genuine into trends of consumption. So Disney is using the story of Andor as a way to maybe appropriate themes of resistance, of rebellion, of revolution into their product in a way to capitalize on perhaps anti-fascist, anti-capitalist sentiments in society, for their profit, for their benefit, and in turn aligning themselves with real-world empires. However, it's not true that Tony Gilroy and other creatives working within the system are reclaiming those tools in order to get this message across to a large audience, right? To entertain, but also to inspire real change as well. And by commenting, reacting, critiquing, reviewing, discussing such an artwork like Andor, an artwork that is compromised but also has a lot of positive themes to it, where perhaps we're doing more good for the culture rather than just either ignoring it or just giving it praise without meaningful commentary, right? So I'm leaning more towards the idea that it's a net positive to discuss Andor within the context of the reality that it's on a platform that supports the evil empire of the Israeli state, a platform that's on the priority list of the BDS movement, a long-respected organization that fights for Palestinian rights and liberation. Coincidentally, what Andor here is fighting for too. And maybe I'm biased because this is a channel where I talk about movies and TV. I can't help but love Andor as a cinephile, but I'm conflicted because I want to stay consistent as a leftist. I'm not sure how I'll cover Andor moving forward. If we go more into what I usually do and do more of a traditional review and then just refer back to this video, or maybe a video relating to a BDS target, I will mention it in the video. I want to know what you think, how you feel about this. And we will all mess up along the way, right? It's just inevitable. You just gotta try to improve and get better. Recently I praised Sinners, Ryan Coogler's new film. Even though I had some critiques of the film, I did lavish it with a lot of praise, even kind of equating it to like a spiritual experience in the cinema, to the point where it benefits more the studio system than Coogler the artist. Maybe not, but it just got me thinking again about like, what are the consequences of these videos that I make, the intersectionality of it all. Praising Sinners is good for the art form, but it's also good for WB, who owns Sinners right now, and WB owns HBO, and on HBO they're gonna make a new Harry Potter show. That's gonna benefit J.K. Rowling, we talked about a bit earlier. And what does it mean to support a streaming service? You may like or support certain movies and TV on there, but not everything. I like watching a lot of HBO stuff, but I'm not gonna watch the new Harry Potter show. But still, I'm contributing to them making that. And then you think about something like Netflix too. You can subscribe to Netflix for, because you love the anti-capitalist Squid Games. But there's also other junk on there. Dave Chappelle's anti-trans jokes are on there with his comedy specials. We just gotta try our best, and we don't, and not everybody has the time or energy to be aware of everything that's going on, and like, what artist, what company is complicit in what. I guess, videos like this and other people speaking out just, I guess, helps, hopefully. Yeah, I don't know if there's like a clear-cut conclusion I can come to right now. It's more just like an open discussion, really. So yeah, let me know what you think. I'll see you next time. I'll be here under the moonlight until the next video. Bye bye.